Amal Unbound by Aisha's Side. Chapter 29 and 30, read for you by Mrs. Shoemaker. Chapter 29. I walked into the kitchen with Nazarene Baji's emptied lunch tray that afternoon. When I stepped through the double doors, Hamid was patting down balls of dough while Fatima and Nabila were setting the servant plates and bowls onto the counter. "Had a bit of flour left over, so I'm making us some fresh rotis," Hamid said when he saw me. He slapped a floured circle of dough onto the skillet and flipped it. "Get the food quick while it's nice and warm. We'll clean up after." I hadn't had fresh rotis in so long. I quickly made myself a plate along with the other servants. I trailed behind Mumtaz and sat down next to her. "Is it true?" Hamid asked me when he joined us. "Did you really talk back to those officers?" "She did," Bilal said. "I froze up as usual." "No one blames you for being afraid around those monsters," Mumtaz said. "Not one bit." "Were they the same police officers that came by last time?" Ghulam had asked between bites. "No," Bilal said. "These were different ones." "It's a parade of them these days," Ghulam remarked. Bilal shrugged and picked up his food. He didn't say anything. I was lucky I got to work for Nazreen Baji. I couldn't imagine having to cater to a person like Jawad Sahib. I cleaned my dishes and put them away. When I stepped into the hallway, Bilal and Nabila followed behind. "Thank you." Bilal stuffed his hands into his kameez. "Thank you for speaking up. You really saved me." "Oh," I said. "That's okay, really." "Well, Nabila and I were talking." He glanced at her and then at me. "We know you like reading, and were enjoying Jawad's library, weren't you?" "It was a mistake," I said stiffly. "I shouldn't have done that." "But what if you could read again?" Nabila asked. I stared at her. "Well, we were talking about it, and I know when he's here, when he's gone, and when he's coming back," Bilal said. "So maybe if we were the lookout, you could borrow books again?" "Why?" I asked. "Why would you help me?" "Because we owe you," Nabila said. "It's our way to thank you." "He would notice his books were missing," I said. "Not if he forgot those books were even there." "Come on," she said. "Follow us." I trailed behind them down the hall to the library. Nabila walked over to one of the filing cabinets. She and Bilal pulled it forward to reveal a bookshelf wedged behind it. "He jammed that new cabinet in here a few months back and hasn't moved it since. He probably doesn't even remember that there are books behind it." I looked at Nabila. As tempting as the books were, how many times could I fall for her tricks? "Amal," Nabila said. "I know I haven't made it easy. I'm sorry. But you can trust us, really. You're one of us now. As Mumtaz says, we have to look out for each other." I looked at her, and then at the books. I slipped out a thin collection of poems and short stories. I ran my hand over the cover. I didn't expect to have this chance again. To be able to turn pages and learn new things and keep my mind alive. I couldn't say no. It was worth the risk to have books in my life again. Chapter 30. Bilal and Nabila remained true to their word. It had been 1 month since I began borrowing books from the library again. I had gone through 7 already. "You'll have a few hours now if you want to get a book," Bilal whispered to me now as we cleaned up after breakfast. "Thanks," I told him. "I'll go in a few minutes." I put away the breakfast tray and rinsed out the milk saucer before slipping into the library to get a book. I barely glanced at the title before cloaking it in my chowder. My hands shook, waiting, as I always did, for someone to walk in on me. But no one did. Nazarene Baji was resting while I stepped into her room, so I had some time to read. I closed my door halfway and sat down on the bed. I looked down at the book, God's Own Land, and turned to the first page. "You think I might be able to read books like that one day?" a voice whispered. I nearly leapt off the bed, but it was just Fatima. She lingered by the edge of the door. "Yes." I gestured to her for her to close the door. "I know reading seems really complicated right now, but once you get the hang of it, it'll be as easy as breathing." "Could you read to me?" She took a step toward me. "Well," I looked down at the book. "This book is a little complicated." "Well, that's okay. I just want to hear it." Fatima sat down next to me, and I read to her. I was wrong to expect her to get restless. Instead, she hung onto every word. "Mumtaz and I are taking a break outside. Join us?" Nabila asked me later that day after Nazarene Baji had gone to visit a friend. The thought of spending time with her still made me uneasy, but my mother's words from arguments with my sisters came to mind. You have to find a way to get along. You can't cast off your family. Nabila wasn't my family, but she was who I lived with now. I had to do my part and make peace. I joined Nabila and Mumtaz on a charpé on the veranda. Rain drizzled down in the garden and a warm mist coated the air. "Here, have some soda," Mumtaz said, handing us cola bottles. "Went to the store this morning for a few things. Figured you girls could use a treat." "Thank you," I said. "No shaking it this time, Nabila," Mumtaz said. "Remember what happened last time?" "As if anyone lets me forget anything in this house," Nabila exclaimed. Mumtaz laughed and took a sip of her tea. "Did the soda erupt?" I asked. "Yes. And how was I supposed to know it would sputter and fly out like that?" Nabila protested. "You shake up the mango juice and nothing happens. I figured it would be the same." My sister made that mistake too. She jumped up and down so much the top flew off, and our ceiling is still stained from the fizzy soda. "See?" Nabila smiled at me before turning to Mumtaz. "I'm not the only one who's done that. It's a common mistake." I smiled back at her. Nabila didn't need to know Safa was 2 years old when this happened. I removed the metal top and took a sip from the frosty drink. The fizzy bubbles reminded me of my sister's laughter. "Can't remember the last time we had a good rainfall," Mumtaz nodded to the sky. "When I first came here, it seemed like my husband and I sat here all the time watching the raindrops dance." "Your husband?" "Yes. He was a gardener for the estate many years ago." "You lived here together?" "We lived with his family back then. But when my husband passed, I decided I'd rather live here." How bad must it have been at her husband's home to choose this as a better alternative? But then I realized Parveen had done the same thing. She lived in a shed behind our house instead of with her parents or her late husband's family. I had always assumed she came to live with us because she wanted to be near us. But perhaps it was more complicated than that. "It's nice that you're teaching Fatima to read," Nabila said. "She's so proud of herself. She can't stop tracing the latest letter you taught her." "I'm glad she's enjoying it," I said. "It's not too late for you to learn to read," Mumtaz said, nudging Nabila. "I'm sure Amal can teach you." "Yes, I could," I said, trying to hide my surprise that Nabila couldn't read. But it made sense. Nabila came here when she was Fatima's age. And where would she have had a chance to keep up with whatever she might have learned before? "Maybe," Nabila said, but she quickly changed the topic. "Did you hear the latest in the wedding drama?" "I haven't." Mumtaz lowered her chai. "The latest girl Nazarene Baji wants Jawad Sahib to see is Rashida's daughter." Now that's something. Mumtaz shook her head. Jawad was engaged to a cousin in that family, Nabila explained to me. He was engaged? Well, barely. It only lasted 2 days. They didn't even announce it before he changed his mind, Mumtaz said. That's what he says, Nabila scoffed. I heard she called it off when she heard about his temper. He was crushed. That's a foolish girl if that's true, Mumtaz said. Why? I asked. If she said no to him, she sounds like a smart girl to me. Nonsense, Mumtaz said. This is a good life for someone who knows how to comfort herself and is smart enough to figure him out. It's not fair, I said. Why should anyone have to figure him out? No, it's not fair. But that's life. There it was yet again, my father's words. Life isn't fair. Maybe it was true, but why was that a reason to just accept everything and go along with it? I hoped the rumor about the girl turning down Jawad Sahib was true. I hoped there really was someone out there who had the courage to stand up to him and say no.